What's up, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Goal Line Dynasty Football. Today, we are going to get into a Superflex startup mock draft. We got 14 rounds coming to you guys. It's got the rookies in it. It's our first mock draft, post free agency. A lot of things have changed in the NFL since our last mock draft. But before we get into the mock draft, Tyler, how we doing, buddy?
Doing wonderful. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Those last two rounds are going to be pretty tough, but we'll do our best to shoot through this one and talk about as many guys as possible.
Absolutely. So let's get this going. Share the old screen here. Hit that start button. I will be drafting from the 6 spot. Tyler's got the 7 spot, so we are just going to snipe the hell out of each other, as I would imagine. So first 5 picks, very standard, I would say. Tyler, you're not even going to have to wonder who I'm going to take because you and I both know who I'm going to take. Josh Allen went first overall, then Pat Mahomes. Kind of a surprise that Jefferson went before Joe Burrow, but you know what? To each his own. If I saw this in real life, I really wouldn't be too shocked because Justin Jefferson's an absolute stud. But at the 106, I'm taking Jalen Hurts. Hurts is a guy that I consider taking as early as the 103 in startups right now. So taking him at 106, kind of a no-brainer. He's got the rushing upside. He was phenomenal last year. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. I mean, I don't really need to explain this pick too much past that. Jalen Hurts is a stud, and I'm pumped to get him at 106.
Yeah, in most cases, he's a top 5 startup pick. I think in most spots, Justin Jefferson goes after these 5 guys, maybe even, at 8th or 9th pick. But I think this one's a fairly easy pick. A lot of people might not agree with me, but I'm going T-Law here.
I knew you were. Knew it.
After the season he had, it's like it's really hard not to be ecstatic about starting off my fantasy or my dynasty team with him. So totally good with it.
So before you take your pick, look at Team 11 over there. First off, taking McCaffrey before Bijan Robinson. I guess not super bold, but kind of surprising. But starting off a Superflex draft with McCaffrey and JT, bold, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, you're swinging for the fences, I guess. That's not how I want to start my dynasty teams. I think it kind of puts you in a hole, but especially, at least in the Superflex league, But like you said, to each his own. Here, I think I'm getting tremendous value on Mr. Kyler Murray. He's a guy who was being taken in the first round in every single startup drafts last year, and I just got him 6 picks later after Bryce Young. I think I'd probably rather have Kyler Murray than whatever Bryce Young. I mean, obviously it could be a miss saying that Kyler Murray over Bryce Young, but at this point I'm eliminating the risk, and I'm just going to take a guy who I know is elite. Might set me back obviously for this year, but maybe later on in the draft I can pick myself up a Geno Smith or a Mac Jones to get me through that time period. And I think I'm pretty happy with the start.
Yeah, I think 206 is a decent spot to get Kyler Murray these days. I mean, there's definitely a discount right now since he's not going to be starting the 2023 season since he's still recovering from that injury. There's a new coaching staff, so going to be a little bit of growing pains in 2023 for Arizona anyway. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It just kind of scares me spending a mid-second round pick on Kyler Murray in a startup just because you really won't be able to use him all too much in 2023. But there's plenty of value to be had later on in the draft for you to get potentially a third quarterback if you're going to contend this year. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown here. And the main reason is because I want the stack, right? Like, I am tempted to go C.J. Stroud. I think he's going to be a phenomenal starter. I am tempted to go with Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to rebound and have a pretty good year in Cleveland this year. And then there's Breece Hall too, your boy. But just having the stack of Jalen Hurts, a top 3 quarterback in my mind, with A.J. Brown, a top 3 fantasy receiver in my mind, I'm not going to be upset about that. I'll be pretty pumped every single time A.J. Brown scores a touchdown because I'll be getting 10 points every time that happens. So.
Yeah, I mean, the weekly upside there is actually just phenomenal. I didn't even really consider that when I was looking at the board for you, but I love it. And I think that's a no-brainer actually.
Well, I'm pretty pumped because Deshaun Watson was going to be highly in competition for my pick there, and he's still here at 306. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that's tempted to go Garrett Wilson here because pairing Garrett Wilson and A.J. Brown on this roster would be pretty freaking sweet. But I think Watson falling to 306 is a total gift. Like I said, I think he's going to rebound in Cleveland. They just added Elijah Moore for him. They still might not be done with adding weapons for him. Up until last year, he has been a top 5 fantasy fantasy quarterback pretty much every single time he has stepped on the field. So look for Watson to rebound this year. Happy to take him as my QB2 at 306.
Yeah, that's obviously a killer value there. No questions asked from me. And I'm going to take your guy, Garrett Wilson, here. I mean, I think that's a pretty easy one, too. I think he's far and away the best receiver that's on the board, especially in terms of age and youth, obviously. And, yeah, super happy to have him in that spot.
Yeah, you just what was I going to say here? You just got to hope that Aaron Rodgers actually does end up in the Jets, because a year with Zach Wilson, or another year with Zach Wilson, I should say, would not be super fun as a Garrett Wilson owner. But I have faith they'll get it done and get Rodgers over there.
Yeah, I mean, we just heard earlier today, well, not when this video comes out, but we heard earlier this week that, Alan Lazard is not concerned. So I'm sure that there's been communication on that end. And here I'm kind of stuck between London and Njigba, I think that, I'd take Drake London easily over any other receiver in this rookie draft other than JSN. I think that's where it gets close for me. And I think just given the pedigree and given who he competed against for targets in college and what he showed us, I think I have to go and add JSN. I'll be just Ohio State University over here with Garrett Wilson and JSN. I'll pair them up.
Yeah, you should have just taken CJ Stroud instead of Kyler Murray. You could have reunited the entire gang there.
That would have been pretty wild, huh?
But, well, that's what I'm hoping Carolina does in real life, but that will never happen. There's no shot they trade back in the first round. Anyway, yeah, I kind of had a feeling you would take JSN there. And you've been super high on JSN even before the consensus was. Not that people were necessarily low on him this time last year, but you were one of those people that was really chomping at the bit to be able to draft him for your fantasy squads this year. So not surprised you went there. This spot, Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of tempting, but I'm not going to take him over Najee Harris because I don't know where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to end up, right? Or as I've said in previous videos, Jamar Gibbs for whatever reason. I'm leaning Najee Harris, right? In one of our last videos that we did, it was either 1 or 2 videos ago, we did a buy low on running backs, and Najee Harris was my favorite buy low guy. He's got easy top 10 upside. I mean, the last half of the 2022 season, he was a top 5 running back from weeks 11 through 18. Pittsburgh is only going to be better this year than they were last year, right? So I really have a lot of faith in Najee Harris. Taking him as my RB1 midway through the 4th round, I think is going to make me pretty damn happy. So Drake London's also tempting. DK Metcalf's also tempting, but I want a legit top 10 RB on this team, so I'm going to take Najee.
Yeah, and that makes him the RB11, I think, off the board there. So I think that's pretty fair value for this draft.
Yeah, I can't complain too much. I think that's a solid grab there for me. This pick is going to be a bit difficult, right? So I was kind of hoping DK Metcalf or Drake London would fall back to me. It would have been a no-brainer at that point. Deebo Samuel, we're not high on him on this channel in the slightest bit. Derrick Henry, I'm not taking at 506 a guy who's going to be 29 next season, right? Christian Watson, again, another one of those guys that just doesn't get enough love on this channel because we just don't love him. Tony Pollard, right? There's rumors that Dallas could take Bijan Robinson if he's still there at the end of the 1st round, or Jahmyr Gibbs in the 2nd round. So I don't know if I want to put all my eggs into the Tony Pollard basket right here because his situation could very well change in April. Then we got Michael Pittman, doesn't have a quarterback. George Kittle, old. Chris Godwin, no quarterback. Jordan Addison, where's he going? Is he being drafted in the 1st round? There's talks that he could fall out of the 1st round now. This is a really difficult situation that I find myself in here. So I don't think there's any security in this whatsoever between looking at all the guys that are available right now. So I'm going to swing for the fences. I'm going to go with the guy that I just personally believe in and I think has a sky-high ceiling. Little ahead of the consensus here, but I'm going to take Jameson Williams because we did not get to see him virtually at all as a rookie. And I mean, dude, they traded up for him in the 1st round. He's going to get used. He's going to get used a lot. And yeah, like I said, sky high ceiling. Think he's going to do really well. So we'll take a shot on him.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who's giving Amon-Ra St. Brown owners a little bit of, a sweat, the fact that you're getting him, 3.5 rounds later, I think is really good value. And I agree with everything you said about the running backs. There's no security in any of the running backs. Now you're talking about JMO at that point, but yeah, there's no security in any running back here. Other than, I think Zach Charbonnet might even really realistically be the best running back that's on the board right here. I don't know if I'd take any of these other guys over him, but I'm going to go with some more upside and a guy who we don't really like, but I think this team is, I'm built around guys who are under 25. Kyler Murray's the oldest guy on my team at 25 years old. Everybody else is 23, 22. So I think I'm going to stick with the trend and just load up here at receiver once again. And I'm going to go Christian Watson. Surprisingly over Treylon Burks, and I might even be able to convince me that Jerry Jeudy could be the guy, but thankfully, Treylon Burks just fell to me again. So I'm going to take Treylon and Christian Watson and just stack up on 2022 and 2023 receivers here.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. You're going to have the youngest receiving core in this league, and it's a pretty damn good one, right? Like Christian Watson is my least favorite of those guys. And as much as I dislike him, right? And I know you're not like super high on him, but in my mind, Treylon Burks is your wide receiver 3. Christian Watson's your wide receiver 4. The draft board flip-flops that. But in any scenario, even me not liking Christian Watson, having him as my wide receiver 4 for a squad, I'd be pretty damn happy with that. So I'm not going to yell at you for those picks at all. So my pick here, again, there's really not a whole lot of security on the board. Jerry Jeudy's going through trade rumors. Dalvin Cook's going through trade rumors. Don't really need Kirk Cousins. Dobbins is not a legit starter. Terry McLaurin is just a yearly, top 18, top 20 receiver, which there's always a spot for that on a roster, right? But I'm just not super interested in that. There's not really a lot of excitement with taking Jerry Jeudy. So I'm kind of between Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison here, just because I would be pretty content with one of these receivers. Jordan Addison, he was my wide receiver 1 for a little bit of this class, came to my senses. Now I like JSN more. Addison tested really poorly, but he is an absolute stud receiver. Quentin Johnston, on the other hand, tested perfectly fine. He's looking like he's going to be the second, if not the first wide receiver drafted in real life for the NFL draft. But with Quentin Johnston, I think he is just entirely a boomer bust player. He's either going to be incredibly awesome for fantasy football, or he's going to be just another guy that is going to be going in like around 12 or around 13 in startups. So I have 6 seconds left to make this pick. I'm going to take Jordan Addison because sky high ceiling, in my opinion. I know he tested poorly, but the process is there. I think he's going to be just fine NFL receiver. Little risky going him and Jameson Williams as my wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3, but hey, no biscuit, no risk it, or no risk it, no biscuit, whatever, however it goes.
Yeah, you had it right the second time, and I really do like the Addison pick there. The fact that, again, you're getting him 2 full rounds later than the guy who, he's competing to being drafted over right now. So, yeah, I love the pick. And, I do love Jordan Addison. I think the weight has scared me off a little bit and has probably bumped him down underneath Quentin Johnston, at least until we see landing spots. But, yeah, I'm all with that pick.
So I'm going to take my RB2 here, and you might be a little mad because you were saying you wanted Zach Charbonnet, but we were going to draft right next to each other because we knew this was going to happen. I'm going to take Charbonnet. I think there's a legitimate chance that Charbonnet is the second running back drafted in real life. I think he could go before Gibbs. I think he has a more stereotypical frame than Gibbs, and I think that he can kind of run in between the tackles, and he's a pretty decent, he can catch the ball. He's definitely not a pass catching back by any stretch of the imagination, but he is serviceable at it. So I think that he could have, this is a ceiling comparison, right? But what we've seen from the last few years of Joe Mixon, I think you can have a very similar player like that in Zach Charbonnet. If he lands in a good situation and he hits a ceiling, I'm going to be pretty happy to have him at 706.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think he was the best running back on the board 2 rounds ago. So, Yeah, like you said, I was going to be pissed about that one. I think he was just about the only player on the board that it made sense for me to take there. Now, I mean, what do I do, right? Like, there's no real pieces that I'm super
Well,
excited to add here.
let, let me ask you this. Are you at least a little tempted to go with your boy Kirk Cousins or maybe take a shot on Russell Wilson, knowing that you're not going to have Kyler Murray earlier on in the year, or are you just fine with kind of riding that wave?
I mean, I was tempted until, I don't have a running back on the roster. So competing isn't in, uh, you know, in my frame of mind yet, but I think I'm going to go with a guy who might help me get there, and shouldn't really phase out for the next, might still be serviceable when my team is competing next year. I think definitely Miles Sanders is probably the easy pick for running back off the board there. Getting that contract in Carolina, I think he's the clear lead back, and yeah, no question there.
You know what the worst thing is? I think if I realized that Miles Sanders was still there, I may have actually taken him before Charbonnet because I don't see Carolina drafting anyone, and I don't see Chuba Hubbard really coming in and being a legit threat to Miles Sanders. I mean, Sanders is not being paid a shit ton of money, but he does have it's either he's the 10th highest paid running back in the league right now or the 12th highest paid running back in the league right now. Either way, Carolina believes in him enough to give him a multi-year contract like that. Think he's actually going to surprise a lot of people out of Carolina. So yeah, I think if I realized he was there, I actually might have leaned him over Charbonnet. So good pick at 707.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I think I'm going to go back to back running backs here and maybe throw together a competing roster, because, there's still a couple, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Geno, Mac Jones, Aaron Rodgers. I'd be fine with any of these guys as my filler for the first couple of weeks. So I'm going to go with Aaron Jones here and take my first. This is probably the oldest pick that I've ever made in a startup in any of our startup drafts. So I'm proud of myself for going on a limb here and doing it because Aaron Jones could still very well be a top 10 running back next year. Other than the fact that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there, I mean, they're probably going to lean a little bit more on the running game. Maybe Jordan Love likes to check down more than Aaron Rodgers did. We'll find out, and I'm fine having Aaron Jones as my RB2 behind Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that. Getting him at the 806, I think it's just fine. Aaron Jones, he's not going to have really many weeks, if any, where he's going to lose you your week, right? Like there's going to be a handful of weeks where he gets you maybe 8 to 12 points and you're like, whatever, he's my RB2. But Aaron Jones is known for those spike weeks. He is going to have a few of those weeks where he's getting you 25 or 30 or even 40 points because we have seen him do that once and we will see him do that again. So I like that pick. I am probably, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Deontay Johnson here. Big buy low wide receiver for us in our recent video. Had he caught some touchdowns this past year, he would have been a top 20 wide receiver for fantasy. He had 8 touchdowns 2 years ago. He had 7 touchdowns 3 years ago. The fact that he had 0 on even more targets just made absolutely no sense. Like I said, I believe Pittsburgh's offense is going to rebound in a big way in 2023. Deontay Johnson, as of this moment, is probably my wide receiver too over J-Mo and Jordan Addison, right? Like they both have a really high ceiling, but Deontay Johnson is about as safe as they come, and he will be at worst like a top 25 wide receiver. So I'm pretty pumped to get him here at 807.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a down year for him compared to what we saw in 2021 and even in 2020. But yeah, I mean, he's almost a bona fide, top 24 wide receiver here. And yeah, in the 8th round, compared to the price that he was being drafted last year, I mean, yeah, smash. He's, only 26, got a couple of years left with hopefully an ascending quarterback. So yeah, I like that one there.
Yeah, pretty happy with that one. I think I'm going to go with my RB3 here, and I'm kind of stuck between Tyler Algier and David Montgomery. On one hand, David Montgomery is actually going to have competition for touches this year with DeAndre Swift. I don't believe that DeAndre Swift should have gone 402 in this startup. I think he's being way overpriced right now still, but it is what it is. But I think Monty is going to lose some touches. He's also a few years older than Tyler Algier, so that's what kind of leans me towards Tyler Algier. I've said it in the last couple of videos that we've done whenever Tyler Algier gets brought up, but they're not going to draft a running back. Atlanta has far too many needs to go and draft a running back. I know you can make the argument that Algier was a day 3 pick. I don't really care because as of right now, his only competition on that roster is Cordarrelle Patterson. And I'm not drafting Algier to catch balls on 3rd downs. I'm drafting him because he's really damn good on 1st and 2nd down, and he will definitely have more than 4 total touchdowns in 2023. So very happy to get him here. I'm going to get one year at worst of production from Tyler Algier, but if he goes out there and puts together a really productive 2023, he's going to keep the ball rolling and he'll be safe in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, they have no real reason to go out there and draft a running back like we were like you were saying in that last video that we had. So here, I still think I can kick the can down the road on my other quarterback because they're just lasting so long. There's still, 4 or 5 of them on the board that I'm pretty happy to have. In terms of receiver, I think I'm tempted for Christian Kirk here. I mean, I don't want to keep taking the top guy off the board, but the guy just finished as a top 10 receiver, the number 11 receiver in fantasy this year. So I'm gonna smash Christian Kirk here, and if there's a point where Jackson Smith and Jigba is in the beginning of the season is not producing right away, then I can fill that guy right in and be pretty hyped about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking Christian Kirk here. His volume is going to go down since Calvin Ridley is there, but we can't deny how good Kirk was in 2022. Like, he's not just going to magically disappear, right? Like, he's not going to be a league winner by any stretch of the imagination for you in 2023, but he's nice and young. He's got a good contract. Jacksonville is nice and committed to him. And as of this moment, he has more chemistry than any other receivers on this team with Trevor Lawrence. So you got yourself that late round stack, and I'd be pretty pumped with that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is Trevor Lawrence is probably going to get better. So, I mean, there's probably going to be more passing volume around this offense. And, I mean, I don't think he gets totally phased away when he's getting paid $20 million a year, But interesting here that we also both punted our tight end position. I think I'm done kicking the can. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers before I get blown off the board by somebody else. And I'll take the Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson stack, the T-Law, Christian Kirk stack, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe pick there. Obviously you run the risk of Rodgers just outright retiring, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to get at least 2 more years of Rodgers if he goes to the Jets. Kind of like a Tom Brady situation, right? We'll see 2, maybe 3 years, then we'll get that retirement and, everyone will be parading in the streets as always when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, you mentioned we both kicked the can way far down the road on the tight ends. And as much as I would like to get a tight end, like Cole Kmet, I really like Cole Kmet, but I don't feel any type of way about Kmet to Njoku, to Evan Ingram, I don't really like Greg Dulcich. But I'm going to keep waiting on tight end. I don't think there's a reason to take him right now, especially since all of these teams that are about to draft after me already have their tight end. I'm thinking all of these are going to be running back and wide receivers. So going to stick with that. There's not particularly anyone that I absolutely love on this list. So I'm going to go with Elijah Moore. And the reason why, stack him up with Deshaun Watson. Cleveland just traded away, the 42nd or 43rd overall pick to get Elijah Moore. I mean, granted, they got back pick 75 or something like that. But trading away early 2nd round draft cap for Elijah Moore, kind of a big deal in real life. So I think Elijah Moore is going to be firmly in the game plan for Cleveland. I don't think he's going to be their wide receiver 1. I think that's still Amari Cooper. But Elijah Moore is going to get used a lot, and I think he's going to be pretty damn good in Cleveland. I think he's going to shock a lot of people.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we've seen him be good. He's going to a new situation. We know he didn't really get along with the coaching staff in New York, so hopefully this new situation provides him some production because he was absolutely abysmal in 2021 or 2022 rather. Sorry.
Let's see. So the running backs, there's really nothing left on running backs. I mean, Jamal Williams is there, which is really intriguing to take, considering that Tyler Algier and Zach Charbonnet are both kind of risky options for me, right? I have a lot of confidence that Algier is going to remain the starter, but who knows? Atlanta could call an audible and take a guy like Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs. There's totally in the realm of possibilities. And then we don't know where Charbonnet is going to end up. So a part of me is kind of leaning towards Jamal Williams because we know he's going to get work. And if Alvin Kamara, does actually get in some serious legal trouble there, Jamal Williams is going to be the unquestioned starter in New Orleans. And, we've seen New Orleans do it before. I know it's a completely different coaching staff than when Kamara and Mark Ingram were doing their thing. But, I mean, we've seen the Saints do it before. Why couldn't they do it again? We've seen plenty of teams do it before. So even if Alvin Kamara is going to be around, I think I am going to take Jamal Williams because I know he's not an amazingly talented player, but you don't just fade away to nothingness after having 17 touchdowns in a single season. So happy to have him on the squad as the RB4.
Yeah, and he's going to have a defined role, so no problem there in the 11th round. But I think the only problem I have is that this guy is still on the board. I feel almost dirty taking him because it's totally just the algo. But I'm taking Zay Flowers. He's a guy who could also be a first round wide receiver this year, and I'm smashing it. I don't think it's fair that he fell to the 11th round. He probably should have been taken, definitely probably above Jalen Hyatt, right around Jahan Dotson, Josh Downs, and those guys. So pretty criminal that he fell here, and probably just an issue on that part. But here on the swing around, just gonna.
I would have been really tempted. I was really tempted to take Zay Flowers instead of Elijah Moore there, but I kind of let the stack and the guaranteed draft cap of what Cleveland paid for him take its toll there. Zay Flowers, dude, I mean, he will be a first round pick in the NFL draft. He should not fall to the 11th round. Very talented. And, Steve Smith of the Carolina Panthers, right? He's come out and said that he has not seen a receiver that reminds him of him more than Zay Flower does. And that's a pretty damn big endorsement, especially when you're a Carolina Panthers fan like me. So, that sold me on Zay Flowers, but he is really damn good. He should not have fallen to the 11th round. That's a steal.
Yeah, I'm stuck on where to go here. I really am. I could go Dalton Kincaid. He's a guy who's also projected to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft this year. Could go Tajay Spears. This is so tough. I hate this. I wish this was my last pick. I hate that we did 14 rounds, but I'm gonna go Dalton Kincaid. Swing for the upside. He'll be. I was hoping Njoku would fall down here, but he didn't. He went right after Zay. So yeah, that's the price I pay for being good.
I would be very concerned about having Dalton Kincaid as my tight end one. So I know we only have 14 rounds. These are kind of shallow rosters that we have. But if I'm you, I'm probably going with a second tight end before it's over because, I mean, think about it. Outside of guys like Evan Ingram or Kyle Pitts or tight ends that are drafted really high into a perfect situation, they really don't do that amazing in year one. So it's kind of scary doing that. But with that being said, I'm going to one-up you, and I'm going to go with a second-year tight end. I'm going to take Trey McBride because Zach Ertz is going to be out for the start of the season. They think he could be back, but Ertz has already come out and said, if I'm not 100%, I'm not playing. So I think Trey McBride is going to get the nod early in Arizona. I think that Arizona could completely change their offense with the new coaching staff. They could open up a 2 tight end set between Trey McBride and Zach Ertz, especially if Kyler Murray is sidelined and they want to keep the throws a bit more safe. I think McBride is actually going to have a nice little breakout year. The end of his 2022 season was pretty decent, right? He had a 20-point week here, the second to last week against Atlanta, and then high snap percentages, whatever. He was looking good, a lot of promise. Not an ideal situation to have him as my tight end one, but it is what it is. So kind of looking through all of these, there's a few wide receivers in here that I like. I really like that Brandon Cooks is still there. I think that any wide receiver too in Dallas almost always has like 900 plus yards. So I think Brandon Cooks in the 13th round could be a pretty damn good value here. There's also John Mechie, right? John Mechie is actually going to join Houston this year. I think I was reading that he's all healthy and he's going to be ready to go by their training camp. And wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Bryce Young throwing to John Mechie in college?
Yes.
Exactly. So Bryce Young is likely going to be a Houston Texan if CJ Stroud goes to Carolina at number 1. So it kind of makes me think that John Mechie is going to come in. He's going to automatically have the best chemistry with the incoming quarterback, right? Like that's not a small deal. So, do I want to get the production out of Cooks with my risky wide receivers here, or do I want to get even more risky and go with John Mechie? I think I'm going to stay risky and go with John Mechie. Just the prospect of Bryce Young going to Houston in this situation, even if Houston does spend pick number 12 on a wide receiver, like obviously they're probably favorites to get JSN or maybe Quentin Johnston at 12 and pair him up with their quarterback at 2. But I don't know. There's a comeback story coming with John Mechie, reuniting potentially with his old college quarterback. There's just something to like about it. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, John Mechie is a buy low guy for a lot of people right now. So he's definitely a guy who has trade value, has draft capital that was invested in him. Obviously, he's planning on playing this year. We're hoping that he's made a full recovery. I think that the running backs are pretty barren, pretty barren. You could consider, scrolling down to Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, Cordell Patterson. Devin Singletary is a yearly, RB2, low end RB2. So as a bye week filler, I'm going to take him in the 13th round.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Devin Singletary there. I'm not fully convinced that Houston is not going to take a running back in the draft. I know they have Dameon Pierce, and then they just brought in Devin Singletary. I think they're only giving Devin Singletary like $1.5 million, and there's a totally new coaching regime in there, right? So not always the best indication for Dameon Pierce either. Like I said, wouldn't be surprised if they roll into the season with Pierce and Singletary, but wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't the case. But 1307, nothing wrong with taking Devin Singletary. Like you said, he's a safe bye week filler at the moment. So by all means.
Okay. And here you might be shocked. I'm scrolling way, way, way down, but I think this is actually pretty fair value for Jake freaking Ferguson. I mean, he's going to be the tight end 1 in Dallas this year. We all know how Dak feels about him. I also heard Travis Kelce not too long ago say that he thinks Jake Ferguson could be the next him if out of, a lot of the rookies in the league. So I liked a lot of what we saw out of Jake Ferguson this year. He showed some upside, and granted, obviously he was irrelevant in fantasy. His role is going to go up a lot this coming year in Dallas. So I'm going to take Jake Ferguson. I think he's a really good athlete, and I think that Dak's going to like throwing the ball to him.
Yeah, I like Jake Ferguson. And I kind of wish I still had – so in the league that Tyler and I are in together, I had Jake Ferguson. I drafted him in like the end of the 4th or early 5th round of our rookie draft. And Tyler and I wanted to get a trade done last year. Couldn't even tell you what the trade was at this point. But I remember Tyler was like, can you do Jake Ferguson as you're throwing? And I was like, screw it. I bought him with like the 48th overall pick. And, Jake Ferguson actually could turn out to be something. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So kind of sad that he was my throw-in piece there. But hey, not too bad for you.
Yeah, he hasn't panned out yet. It's all speculation, right?
Yeah. But it is what it is. So I don't really know what I want to do. I queued up some guys here. I have Rashad Penny, James Robinson, KJ Osborne, Terrace Marshall, Darnell Washington, and Chiggy Okonkwo. I really don't know what I want to do here. Trey McBride, I have faith in, but I also have faith in Chiggy in Tennessee. And I really do think Darnell Washington is like dollar store Kyle Pitts, right? Like he's so physically gifted. He's an absolute freak out there. But then Rashad Penny, I mean, behind that Eagles offensive line, he could be really damn good. And my running back room is a big question mark, but I'm running out of time here. So I'm going to take the guy that I'm really in love with for the draft process. I'll take Darnell Washington. He could be my rookie tight end this year, kind of sleeper for upcoming years or whatever. Felt a little rushed there. Don't know if I would have taken him in the 14th if I wasn't out of time, but it is what it is. So let's see here. So let's check out your team first.
I just think I have to note the fact that Mac Jones did not get drafted is absolutely crazy.
Wow. Shit, you're right. I mean, granted, this was a more shallow draft. Most startups are going to have, I would say, at least 18 to 22 rounds, right? We only did 14 because we're not going to sit here and talk about, why you should take Terrace Marshall in the 15th round and why KJ Osborne needs to be gone by the 18th round, right? Like, it's all speculation at that point. So, if you have any late round guys that you have questions on, comment below. Tyler and I will give you our thoughts on them, but not really going to get into those guys in this video. So, Tyler, your team, quarterbacks. We got T. Law, Kyler Murray, and Aaron Rodgers. I don't really think there's a whole hell of a lot we need to say about this quarterback room, right? Like, T. Law is really good, and he's going to keep getting better. Aaron Rodgers, we know what we can expect out of him. And then Kyler Murray, by the end of 2023, is going to be back to being Kyler Murray, which we all know is at worst a top 10 quarterback. So you've got a stellar quarterback room here.
Yeah, I think that T-Law has a chance to, compete to be drafted like over Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts next year. He could end up being like the fifth one out of that group, And I think to have Kyler Murray as my QB2 is definitely more than exceptional and going to be a weekly advantage for me. And then, Aaron Rodgers as the filler while anybody's unhealthy or on a bye week. I think over the next year or two, he's obviously in an improved situation or will be hopefully in an improved situation going over to New York. So, I like the room that I have and I'm comfortable with it. I think it's important in Superflex to walk away with a room that you're comfortable with. And it's tough to do a lot of times if you're outside of that top five. So I'm good with how that panned out.
Yeah, definitely. Your quarterbacks and your receivers are the biggest strengths here, right? So Garrett Wilson, JSN, Christian Watson, Traylon Burks, Christian Kirk, and Zay Flowers. I mean, Christian Kirk is your oldest wide receiver, and he's, 26 years old, I believe. So really young wide receiver core. Sky high upside, right? Garrett Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers comes to town, Garrett Wilson is potentially a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. JSN, no one's going to be surprised if he's a top 10 wide receiver by the end of his rookie year. Watson could go either way. Traylon Burks could go either way. Kirk is nice and safe, I would say. And then Zay Flowers is just a phenomenal, I don't even want to call him a lottery ticket in the 11th round. I think that's a legitimate starting receiver for you. He could be plugged in on bye weeks, and if he gets drafted in the first round to the right spot, Zay Flowers is going to be a really good NFL receiver. So this entire room is fantastic that you've put together.
Yeah, definitely. And this is exactly how I want to walk away from startup drafts. I mean, think about who the hardest guys to buy in any dynasty league are is the quarterbacks and the receivers, especially when they're young and when they're good. So, I think in terms of accruing value and also just putting together a starting lineup, I think I'm pretty set with how it turned out for me.
So let me ask you this, right? We won't get too much into the running back room or the tight end room. We know that both of our tight end rooms are severely lacking in this draft, but in my opinion, if you fall out of the top 4 or 5, right? Like Pitts, Kelsey, Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, maybe you can loop Dallas Goedert and George Kittle in there. If you fall out of those guys, in my opinion, just completely punt the position because everyone offers kind of similar upside. I mean, obviously, Pat Freiermuth, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, a little bit safer than the guys that we've taken, but still, I mean, Schultz in Houston, not wonderful. Pat Freiermuth, good, really good, right? But not a super high ceiling or anything like that. I like punting the position. But I want to ask you this. If we had trade downs available, right? You're sitting there at 206 and you took Kyler Murray. Are you considering trading down if Kyler Murray is the top guy on your board at 206, or are you still pulling trigger there?
Probably not. I'm pulling trigger there. I think that was a good value. I think, it's Dynasty. I'm not going to let the 6 or 7 games that he doesn't play for really changed my mind there when I can get an elite 25-year-old quarterback that was drafted in the mid first round last year.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see it. I think there's nothing wrong with taking Kyler there. Like you said, it's a good value. It is a really good value. I think that by the mid-second, Kyler Murray should not fall out of the second round, right? I would take him a little bit later. Like, I think if Kyler Murray was on the board and I had to choose between him and A.J. Brown, I think I still would have chosen A.J. Brown personally, but that's just because I just have a hard time drafting a quarterback that's not going to play at the start of this year. You're actually smart with it, and it's like, well, I'll have him by week 6 or 7, so who really cares about it? But no, overall, I like your team a lot. The running backs scare me a little bit, right? But like Miles Sanders and Aaron Jones, Sanders is at worst a top 15 fantasy wide receiver in Carolina in 2023. And then we know what Aaron Jones is. He's the spike week running back that's going to be no worse than like a top 24 guy for you. So perfectly fine in year one.
Yeah, I think it'll keep me afloat, and this is, again, another team that I'd probably be comfortable selling a future first for to go out and maybe upgrade from, Aaron Jones to a Najee or something like that, if that owner would be willing to do it. And yeah, well, we would see, like, they're running backs. You buy them when you need them. I don't think I would have felt safe with Kyler Murray as my QB2, drafting the Breece Halls and the Kenny Walkers. It's tough to take those guys when you don't have your quarterback room filled out yet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a really good process to kind of take on. If you have the quarterbacks and you're ready to go, yeah, maybe invest in some earlier capital on these running backs. But you're right. I mean, you don't buy running backs in the offseason. So why would you buy them in your March 26th startup? Right? Like, unless you can come away, like, yeah, if I'm sitting there at the end of the first round, if I'm looking at this list, right, and I'm team 11 or I'm T12 based off of the quarterbacks that were taken, yeah, I'm probably taking Bijan Robinson there. Like, I'm perfectly content to do that, and I'll pivot my team around that pick. But either way, nothing wrong with it. My team right here, Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson, perfectly fine with that quarterback room, right? We know that this is going to be more than 14 rounds. I probably will take a QB3. I'm a firm believer that, by the end of your startup, if there is a QB3 on the board in those last 2 or 3 rounds, you should just take them, because it's good to have that bye week filler, or God forbid Hurts or Watson gets hurt. Like, it is what it is. The running back room here, it's far from my favorite running back room. But I'm pretty pumped to have Najee Harris on it, because I know that there's some safety there. I know that Jamal Williams is going to provide some weekly upside. I know that if Atlanta doesn't take a rookie, Algier is going to be a 1,000-yard rusher again. I have zero doubts about that in my mind. And then one of my favorite things to play out in my head for Zach Charbonnet is going to Miami at 50 overall, or wherever they have their second pick. They need a running back. They need a guy like Zach Charbonnet, and putting him in an offense like that would be a lot of fun. So again, it's not my favorite running back room that I've ever put together, but I think I'm competing year one with these running backs combined with the rest of this roster. I think the only weakness is the tight end position, but you know how we feel about that.
Yeah, dude, I'm actually more than comfortable with Najee, Charbonnet, and Algier. And then, having Jamal Williams as your, old and aging guy. I think that room is fine to keep you afloat. It doesn't have to be elite when, you have Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson. That's completely stacked up. That's a stacked quarterback room there too. And then having A.J. Brown as your wide receiver 1 is obviously a positional advantage that you're going to have for a long time. So, yeah, I think the running back room is more than fine and more than enough to keep you afloat and compete.
The one thing about this team that I don't think I've ever done before is I really shot for the moon on all of my wide receivers, right? Like, we know what A.J. Brown is. We know he's a top 5 guy. Not a mistake taking him there. Jamison Williams, haven't really seen him play. He showed flashes, right? But haven't really seen him play fully in the capacity of the NFL, right? Could be great, could be a dud. Jordan Addison, not even drafted yet. Deontay Johnson, I'm assuming that his touchdowns are going to come back, right? I think they will. I do genuinely think they will, but maybe they don't. Maybe Pittsburgh falls flat again. Who knows? And then Elijah Moore, I'm assuming he's going to develop his rapport with Deshaun Watson. John Mechie, I'm assuming he's going to go out there, be healthy enough to play and also have a good rapport with potentially Bryce Young. So it is a really risky wide receiver room, I would say. But there is a world where this receiver room absolutely kicks ass. And I'm fine with taking the risk on that.
Yeah, I mean, you went for upside and you definitely got it. I think just AJ Brown and Deontay, if you consider them your wide receivers 1 and 2, then you look at Addison as your and JMO as your 3 and 4. Then I think you start to look at it like, hey, this is a pretty solid room.
Yeah, I think so. So no complaints. Is it my favorite mock draft we've ever done together? Probably not, but it's far from my least favorite. I think I'm competing in year 1, and it's a pretty damn young team. We both drafted very young teams, right? Like outside of Jamal Williams, I don't think I have a single guy on my team that's older than 26 or 27 years old. So I'll take it.
Yeah, and we're both pretty much in that same boat. At least nobody that's significant to the roster construction. But yeah, this is exactly how you wanna build it. I think that it's going to be hard to argue against, most of these picks. I mean, if I'm you, I might go with Drake London over Najee there. And then maybe, I don't know, even take Tony Pollard and just thinking about the combination of Drake London and Tony Pollard versus Najee and JMO. I think it's pretty comparable, but you might have felt a little bit safer about your receiver room there.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing to point out. In hindsight, I think Drake London and Pollard might have made me feel a bit safer. But, I mean, what happens if Dallas – that's me playing scared that Dallas is going to draft a running back just because we know how Jerry Jones operates, right? Jerry Jones always has his running back. I know he likes Tony Pollard, but don't forget, they only franchise tagged him. They didn't sign him to this long deal. I know that, that still could come, but that's the part that scares me is they release Zeke and they franchise Tony Pollard. So what's going on? I don't know.
I think at least just for the year could be good. But again, dude, they're running backs and they're turning into, yearly bets at this point. So it is what it is when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Now, before we get going, let me ask you this. Kyle Pitts went 304. Now, I know you're a really big Kyle Pitts guy. I've come around to Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was very disappointing, to say the least, in 2022. Desmond Ridder is very likely still going to be their quarterback moving forward. And Drake London has shown that he can be a true wide receiver 1. I mean, his target share and all the analytical crap that goes on in the background, Drake London smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. So do you think 304 is too early for Kyle Pitts in this situation? Because as much as I like him, there's a lot of guys that went in rounds 3 or 4, maybe even a couple of guys in round 5 that I'm considering taking over Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm looking at the board, I would rather have Garrett Wilson, Olave, probably ETN, Devonta Smith, and Njigba, and London probably over him in terms of where I value him. But again, I mean, Kyle Pitts, I still believe in him. I still believe he can be elite, but until he proves it, it's tough to draft him over the guys that are proving it, and that are actually putting up points for your fantasy rosters.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I keep falling to – I mean, I'm in love with TJ Hawkinson, right? I'm so upset that I only had him in one league and I traded him away before he got, sent off to Minnesota. But getting him at 412 versus getting Kyle Pitts at 304, in terms of where that value is, I'm taking TJ Hawkinson over Kyle Pitts at 412 and 304. I'm taking Hawkinson 10 times out of 10 in this situation. I think there's really not a big drop off, obviously there's a really high ceiling in Pitts, but we saw a really, really high season high ceiling out of TJ Hawkinson in 2022. And I think that's just going to keep moving forward. But I don't know. I know you're a Kyle Pitts guy, so I kind of wanted to bring it up because 304 is just a bit too rich for my blood personally.
And I am a Kyle Pitts guy, but it's getting hard to not trade him away for, like, if you can get TJ Hawkinson in a first, I don't know if anybody's going to send that deal or anything like that. It's hard to argue against that process at this point because he has not shown us that he is what we assumed he was going to be quite yet. So
Yeah.
when you can, if you can find a spot where you can trade back to a TJ Hawkinson and an extra draft pick, then I'm all for it. And even though it breaks my heart to say.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us here on Goal Line Dynasty. Hopefully you enjoyed our mock draft, and, hopefully we kind of gave some commentary on some players that you've been looking for commentary on. In the comments below, obviously like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comments below, let us know whose team you like more. Do you like my team more, or do you like Tyler's team more? Or if you feel like saying whose you hate more, if you want to get real passionate about it, do that too. Because, we're always down to see what you guys got to say. There is a guy who's always commenting, really upset at us over Christian Watson, right? I don't know your name, but keep it up. I kind of like it. And Tyler threw you a bone, right? You've asked us multiple times why we've taken Burks over Watson in startups, and it's finally happened. One of us has taken Watson over Burks. Kind of funny how that worked out, but yeah, keep it up. It's cool. It's a lot of fun. Tyler, any closing remarks before we get off here?
I mean, you're really bold asking them to pick whose team's going to be their favorite, because it's going to be pretty clearly mine. Once again, outdrafted you, outsmarted you. Yeah, it's just the way this game goes at this point. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how good I am at this. Let me know how bad I am, and let Mikey know how bad he is.
Yeah, exactly. Because nothing says I'm really good at this like drafting a guy 18 overall that can't play until November. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to Goal Line Dynasty, and we will see you next time.